we will. Okay. Let us pray together, Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga, Jesus Christ, Babaji, Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar Ji, beloved Gurudev, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints and sages of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow at thy feet. Dear masters of Kriya Yoga, help us to tune into thy consciousness, thy bliss, thy joy, thy teachings, thy guidance. May we always be in tune with thy guidance and live our lives as you want us to. May we be able to dive deeper into these teachings, practice our Kriya Yoga. May we always feel thy presence in our lives, in all that we do. Guide our thoughts, guide our words, guide our actions. We are thine, be thou eternally ours. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We will chant. Listen, 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 listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart song. Pausing just a moment. Opening our hearts, our minds to be receptive. Today, let us visualize that we are sitting in Serampur with Mukunda and his Guru, Sri Yukteswar. We are sitting at their feet in that beautiful second floor room where Sri Yukteswar is telling him about his meeting with Babaji. Let us sit in rapt attention listening to these beautiful stories of his meetings with Babaji, the various inspiring things that we learn today. For a moment, pausing here with this visualization. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we have been going through these very important, all the chapters are important, but now we have been introduced to Babaji, Lahiri Mahashaya, and slowly this whole thing is building up towards what this path is all about. Why they appeared when they did. What is the reason? What was the divine command that each one of them had, and how they are planning um, the redemption of this planet in this ascending Dwapara Yuga. So now we come to know where this is being built up and why Paramhansa Yogananda came into this world. As he mentioned that he came to, his dispensation was to spread the teachings of Kriya Yoga, this ancient, effective teachings of Kriya Yoga to the West, where there are many souls who were, needing something that would help them progress faster. The current, whatever it was, the Christianity, or was what Swamiji would say, churchianity, was not really helping them. And they were eager to find something that will help them move forward. And so this whole process started. And we come to this chapter which says Babaji's interest in the West. So let us listen. This is the longest chapter. We will pause it in 15 minutes, discuss it, and then move forward. Otherwise, it becomes too long. So, okay.
Chapter 36. Babaji's Interest in the West. Master, did you ever meet Babaji? It was a calm summer night in Serampore. The large stars of the tropics gleamed over our heads as I sat by Sri Yukteswar's side on the second-story balcony of the hermitage. Yes, Master smiled at my direct question, his eyes lit with reverence. 3 times I have been blessed by the sight of the deathless Guru. Our first meeting was in Allahabad at a Kumbh Mela. The religious fairs held in India since time immemorial are known as Kumbh Melas. They have kept spiritual goals in constant sight of the multitude. Devout Hindus gather by the millions every 6 years to meet thousands of sadhus, yogis, swamis, and ascetics of all kinds. Many are hermits who never leave their secluded haunts except to attend the melas and bestow their blessings on worldly men and women. I was not a Swami at the time I met Babaji, Sri Yukteswar went on, but I had already received Kriya initiation from Lahiri Mahashaya. He encouraged me to attend the Mela which was convening in January 1894 at Allahabad. It was my first experience of a kumbha. I felt slightly dazed by the clamor and surge of the crowd. In my searching gazes around, I saw no illumined face of a master. Passing a bridge on the bank of the Ganges, I noticed an acquaintance standing nearby, his begging bowl extended. This fair is nothing but a chaos of noise and beggars, I thought in disillusionment. I wonder if Western scientists, patiently enlarging the realms of knowledge for the practical good of mankind, are not more pleasing to God than these idlers who profess religion but concentrate on alms. My smoldering reflections on social reforms were interrupted by the voice of a tall sannyasi who halted before me. "Sir," he said, "a saint is calling you." "Who is he?" "Come and see for yourself." Hesitantly following this laconic advice, I soon found myself near a tree whose branches were sheltering the captive group of disciples. The master, a bright, unusual figure, with sparkling dark eyes, rose at my approach and embraced me. "Welcome, Swamiji," he said affectionately. "Sir," I replied emphatically, "I am not a Swami." Those on whom I am divinely directed to bestow this title of Swami never cast it off. The saint addressed me simply, but deep conviction of truth rang in his words. I was engulfed in an instant wave of spiritual blessing. Smiling at my sudden elevation into the ancient monastic order, I bowed at the feet of the obviously great and angelic being in human form who had thus honored me. Babaji, for it was indeed he, motioned me to a seat near him under the tree. He was strong and young, and looked like Lahiri Mahashai. Yet the resemblance did not strike me, even though I had often heard of the extraordinary similarities in the appearance of these two masters. Babaji possesses a power by which he can prevent any specific thought from arising in a person's mind. Evidently the great Guru wished me to be perfectly natural in his presence, not overawed by the knowledge of his identity. "What do you think of the Kumbh Mela?" "I was greatly disappointed, sir," I added hastily, "up until the time I met you. Somehow saints and this commotion don't seem to belong together." "Child," the master said, though apparently I was nearly twice his own age, "for the faults of the many judge not the whole. Everything on earth is of a mixed character, like a mingling of sand and sugar. Be like the wise ant which seizes only the sugar and leaves the sand untouched." Though many sadhus here still wander in delusion, yet the Mela is blessed by a few men of God realization. In view of my own meeting with this exalted master, I quickly agreed with his observation. "Sir," I commented, "I have been thinking of the scientific men of the West, greater by far in intelligence than most people congregated here, living in distant Europe and America, professing different creeds, and ignorant of the real values of such melas as the present one. They are the men who could benefit greatly by meetings with India's masters. But although high in intellectual attainments, many Westerners are wedded to rank materialism. Others, famous in science and philosophy, do not recognize the essential unity in religion. Their creeds serve as insurmountable barriers that threaten to separate them from us forever." "I saw that you are interested in the West as well as the East." Babaji's face beamed with approval. "I felt the pangs of your heart, broad enough for all men, whether Oriental or Occidental. That is why I summoned you here. East and West must establish a golden middle path of activity and spirituality combined," he continued. "India has much to learn from the West in material development. In return, India can teach the universal methods by which the West will be able to base its religious beliefs on the unshakable foundations of yogic science. You, Swamiji, have a part to play in the coming harmonious exchange between Orient and Occident. Some years hence, I shall send you a disciple whom you can train for yoga dissemination in the West. The vibrations there of many spiritually seeking souls come flood-like to me. I perceive potential saints in America and Europe waiting to be awakened." At this point in his story, Sri Yukteswar turned his gaze fully on mine. "My son," he said, smiling in the moonlight, "you are the disciple that, years ago, Babaji promised to send me." I was happy to learn that Babaji had directed my steps to Sri Yukteswar. Yet it was hard for me to visualize myself in the remote West, away from my beloved Guru and the simple hermitage peace. Babaji then spoke of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Yukteswar went on. To my astonishment, he indicated by a few words of praise that he was aware of the fact that I had written interpretations on the various Gita chapters. At my request, Swamiji, please undertake another task, the great master said. Will you not write a short book on the underlying basic unity between the Christian and Hindu scriptures? Show by parallel references that the inspired sons of God have spoken the same truths, now obscured by men's sectarian differences. Maharaj, I answered diffidently, what a command! Shall I be able to fulfill it? Babaji laughed softly. My son, why do you doubt? He said reassuringly. Indeed, whose work is all this, and who is the doer of all actions? Whatever the Lord has made me say is bound to materialize as truth. I deemed myself empowered by the blessings of the saint, and agreed to write the book. Feeling reluctantly that the parting hour had arrived, I rose from my leafy seat. Do you know Lahiri? The master inquired. He is a great soul, isn't he? Tell him of our meeting. He then gave me a message for Lahiri Mahashai. After I had bowed humbly in farewell, the saint smiled benignly. When your book is finished, I shall pay you a visit, he promised. Goodbye for the present. I left Allahabad the following day and entrained for Benares. Reaching my Guru's home, I poured out the story of the wonderful saint at the Kumbh Mela. Oh, didn't you recognize him? Lahiri Mahashai's eyes were dancing with laughter. I see you couldn't, for he prevented you. He is my incomparable Guru, the celestial Babaji. Babaji, I repeated, awestruck. The Yogi Christ, Babaji. The invisible, visible Savior, Babaji. Oh, if I could just recall the past and be once more in his presence, to show my devotion at his lotus feet. Never mind, Lahiri Mahashai said consolingly. He has promised to see you again. Gurudeva, the Divine Master asked me to give you a message. Tell Lahiri, he said, that the stored-up power for this life now runs low. It is nearly finished. At my utterance of these enigmatic words, Lahiri Mahashai's figure trembled as though touched by a lightning current. In an instant everything about him fell silent. His smiling countenance turned incredibly stern, like a wooden statue, sombre and immovable in its seat. His body became colorless. I was alarmed and bewildered. Never in my life had I seen this joyous soul manifest such awful gravity. The other disciples present stared apprehensively. 3 hours passed in utter silence. Then Lahiri Mahashai resumed his natural, cheerful demeanor and spoke affectionately to each of the chelas. Everyone sighed in relief. I realized by my master's reaction that Babaji's message had been an unmistakable signal by which Lahiri Mahashai understood that his body would soon be untenanted. His awesome silence proved that my Guru had instantly controlled his being, cut his last cord of attachment to the material world, and fled to his ever-living identity in spirit. Babaji's remark had been his way of saying, I shall be ever with you. Though Babaji and Lahiri Mahashai were omniscient, and had no need of communicating with each other through me or any other intermediary, the great ones often condescend to play a part in the human drama. Occasionally they transmit their prophecies through messengers in an ordinary way, that the final fulfillment of their words may infuse greater divine faith in a wide circle of men who later learn the story. I soon left Benares and set to work in Serampore on the scriptural writings requested by Babaji. Sri Yukteswar continued. No sooner had I begun my task than I was able to compose a poem dedicated to the deathless Guru. The melodious lines flowed effortlessly from my pen, though never before had I attempted Sanskrit poetry. In the quiet of night I busied myself over a comparison of the Bible and the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma. Quoting the words of the blessed Lord Jesus, I showed that his teachings were in essence one with the revelations of the Vedas. To my relief, my book was finished in a short time. I realized that this speedy blessing was due to the grace of my Param Guru Maharaj. The chapters first appeared in the Sadhu Sambad journal. Later they were privately printed as a book by one of my Kitterpur disciples.
So let us discuss this part that we have gone through and then read further. Okay. So such an interesting, such a beautiful story of his meeting, first time that he met Babaji at the Kumbh Mela, where he says that Kumbh Mela has been, it has been around for thousands of years. We don't know how long actually. And it has been uninterrupted, even though, India was occupied by other forces, outsiders, and they tried to disrupt, but that never stopped. I think that is the power of this God realized masters, that despite all that the country went through, that these things, the religious, not really religious, the spiritual wealth that this country has, that was never, given up for whatever was happening. So here this verse where he says that many hermits who never leave their secluded haunts, they come down. And that is the time when, the normal people, the regular people are able to meet these hermits and or the self-realized masters and get their blessings and, be in an exalted consciousness. And so here he was, and he was kind of, being judgmental, right? Where he says that, in West, people are more, they are going about finding, because that is the time when they were exploring, the science was really taking off. We were entering the ascending Dwapar Yuga. So the discoveries were happening, atoms and all the other things were being found out. The E is equal to M. No, by that time they had not yet found out, because this meeting was in 1894. So E is equal to MC square happened in 1905. But other discoveries were starting to happen. And for a moment, he just thought like, what? I mean, the guys are finding things. And here, what are they doing in the name of religion? They're taking alms. And that is when, one saint comes and says, you are being summoned by a saint. If you remember in the last chapter also, where Lahiri Mahashaya meets Babaji, and then he first says that whenever you want, I will come. But then Lahiri Mahashaya kind of called him for a very trivial thing, where because people were questioning that are there even any saints or self-realized masters, and that is when Babaji comes. But then he says that in future, I will come when you need it. And when do we need a guru? Is when we need certain lessons so that we can move forward. We have to progress. And for that, there are some lessons to be learned. And that is when Babaji appears. So here, Sri Yukteswar had this kind of judgmental thought. So Babaji had to come. There was a need here that Sri Yukteswar meet him. So he's been summoned. And so why don't we also think it this way, that where we are also trying to learn, trying to understand how to move forward. And at times, there are these blocks, and then suddenly, something uh, comes to our mind or our consciousness, and we are able to break that block and move forward, understand what is needed to be spiritually to be progressing on this path. So we can look at it as, Babaji is helping us understand these, maybe through our meditation, or maybe through interaction with a Guru Bhai, or with anybody for that matter. We meet somebody and somebody says something, and then it strikes us, oh, I have been doing it this way, that was wrong, and we make efforts to change. It should mean that Babaji is taking an interest in us. And even though we might not, like where the further story, there is this story where he says that your restlessness, that you practically extinguished me. So with our restless mind, even if he's right here sitting next to us, we might never even notice him, right? So, but we can take heart in understanding that every time we have learned something and moved forward, it was his hand. He was around. He was guiding us. So it's a very wonderful thought to go ahead with. So, and very sweetly he says, the master, a bright, unusual figure with sparkling dark eyes, rose as at my approach and embraced me. Such a beautiful thing. Even when Lahiri Mahashaya said, he came, when he had called him, and when he came up, he extended his arm in welcome. So it's such a beautiful way he is embracing and inviting his disciples. Okay, so here where he calls him Swami, and he says, I'm not a Swami. And he says, those on whom I am divinely directed. It is not random. These days we use these words, Guru, Swami, for just about anything, right? Gadget guru and this and that. It's become a common place to use these words, but they are very, very deep words that should not be used that way. And as Babaji says, he was divinely directed, which means this is going to happen. Even though at that time, as Sri Yukteswar said, I had got my Kriya initiation, but he was still, a married man. He had a wife. He became a Swami only after the passing of his wife. Daughter was already married, and the wife had passed away. And that is when he took the Swamihood. But Babaji had already foretold him that, you are anyways going to. So he was already looking at him as Swami Sri Yukteswar. And he says that, those on whom I'm divinely directed to bestow the title of Swami, never cast it off. It is a given. They are never able to take it off. So here, Sri Yukteswar, it was very obvious that when he saw this saint, he realizes this is like, not an ordinary person. He's a self-realized master. He's like, and he also, there is a resemblance, as we all know, that he looks quite similar to Lahiri Mahashaya. But it's not striking him at that time. This is on a hindsight when he's telling Master Mukunda that Babaji, for it was indeed he, motioned me to a seat near him under the tree. But at that moment, he had not realized it was Babaji. He just thought that this is some enlightened soul. And he's saying that there was a strong resemblance, yet the resemblance did not strike me, even though I had often heard of extraordinary similarities in the appearance. So now he says, Babaji possesses a power by which he can prevent any specific thought from arising in a person's mind. So in the way, when the materializing the palace, in that chapter, we saw that he planted a thought, and in a person who was not even his devotee, but certain things had to happen there was, a divine dispensation that Lahiri had to be called up, and he planted this thought in a person's mind who had the power to make those changes happen. And here he prevented Sri Yukteswar to realize that this was Babaji. Because if he had realized, what would have happened? He would have, oh my God, this is Babaji whom Lahiri Mahashaya had talked about. And what Babaji was trying to do through this interaction, that would have been lost, because he would have been so excited and so happy, so overawed by everything that was happening at that time. So he kind of made him not realize that this was Babaji he was talking to. And he's leading him into that. What do you think of Kumbh Mela? Because he knows, as Master said to Swami Kriyananda, I know every thought that each one of you thinks, right? So all these masters know every thought that each one of us thinks. So Babaji had picked up that thought that Sri Yukteswar was thinking that, people here, what kind of people are coming here and all. So that is why he just leads him into that. And as expected, Sri Yukteswar starts saying that, I'm disappointed. And he says, child, for the fault of many, not just one or two, he's saying for the fault of many, don't just judge the whole. He says, be like the ant who, despite sand and sugar being together, this is a very important lesson. And here I think we need to pause, because Lahiri Mahashaya also had a similar thought when he had gone to Kumbh Mela. And again, at that time, Babaji had appeared and had said the same thing. So, and again, Sri Yukteswar, it's almost like very similar situation, very similar thoughts, and Babaji comes. And, it is an important lesson for each one of us, I guess, because humility, because we are on the, this it is very, lot of people have that. It's called spiritual. I mean, we are trying to get away from transcend ego. But then when somebody comes on the path, they're meditating, and then they're looking at these other people who know nothing about meditation, and they're living a jolly life, drinking, eating, making merry. And, people do have this tendency to say, oh, what kind of life are they living? Oh my God, what is this? We must have been there a couple of years back, but suddenly we are like, what kind of people are they? How can they live like this? So this is very, very normal and very common. So time and again, this part is coming that Babaji is trying, and through these stories, the masters are trying to tell us that it's something we need to watch in ourselves. If any of us at any point of time have this thought, it's a point to remember that it's not acceptable. At the end of the day, if we want to progress on the spiritual journey, attitudes are very important. And humility is definitely a very important aspect. If we see all those self-realized masters, the saints, very humble. Humble doesn't mean self-abasing or putting yourself down just so that to say, oh, I'm so humble. That is not. They're very strong people. The saints are very strong. What humility really means is they don't judge. They accept everyone the way they are. That is what masters do. It's an unconditional love, and they have been there in previous so many incarnations back. They know each one of us what we are going through. They have been through. So it is very important to watch this thought. So I think this can be our takeaway, not only for the next 1 week, but throughout, even in our journey of spirituality. Watch ourselves, hold back the moment the thought comes, or where we seem to be judging. It's good to check ourselves in that. Okay, so the next page, where he says that he again says, talks about the people of West, and where he thinks that they are they're doing well, science and all, and I'm sure they are also needing spiritual lessons now. They are ready for it. Here, Babaji says, I saw that you're interested in the West as well as the East. And then he goes on to say, I felt the pangs in your heart broad enough for all men. And that is why I summoned you here. So, why did Babaji summon? Because his heart was open. Shri Yukteswar, later on, when he writes that book, The Holy Science, he's written about 8 meannesses of heart. When we are not able to progress in the spirituality, in our spiritual journey, is because of these 8 meannesses. He says the moment the man is able to overcome this, they are obstacles, and the moment we overcome it, we can be free. And which are the 8 meannesses? He said shame, pride of pedigree, racism, and more. I'll write in the group later. I'm forgetting what. So that kind of 8 meannesses of heart. So here again, where he was open, that those, even those Westerners should be given. So Babaji saw that he is interested in being open, in helping others, and that is why he was summoned, because for this purpose that Babaji had, he fit in that, right? So again, this is something, not judging, one, two, how can I help others? This is again a very important aspect on the spiritual journey. So it's not just about me, I need to meditate, I need to progress further, but how can I help others also? I am progressing in the process, I take along. And Master said that, to be free, you need to help 7 more people. Each person has to bring 7 more people in that journey, help them to be free. So that is another very important aspect on the spiritual journey, that we need to be more compassionate about others. So he noticed that.
Jayanti, I have one question here. Can I ask now or should I ask later?
Yeah, you ask.
Okay, actually, it's related to humility and what you said, that we should not judge. The thing is that now that we're on this path, we are also more conscious of the spiritual growth. So what happens invariably is that when we interact with people, without realizing, I end up judging on whether he is probably at a higher level or not. So is that wrong? Because people react when I say, okay, I was meditating, they'll have different reactions. Now, depending, I'll understand what so I'm not trying to look down or look up to them, but I end up judging them.
Yeah, it is wrong, because we can never the whole problem is, we are conditioned that I am here, so somebody who has been meditating for a longer time is more ahead of me, or somebody who's just started is behind me, or somebody who's not meditating is like, oh. But we don't know what they have been carrying from their past lives. Some might be a yogi, but has chosen in this life to enjoy this life and see, I mean, some karmic thing that brought them here, and they are doing that. So it is not, a clear cut linear progression like everything else, because we judge spirituality with the conditions that we experience in this world, right? And spirituality is much beyond that. It's not so easy to understand. So yes, we are not supposed to even judge that. You're right.
Okay. Difficult, but yeah, we should do it like that.
It is. Yeah, that is very important, because I think time and again, couple of chapters, we are experiencing the same story, which means that he is trying to tell us that don't judge. It really doesn't matter. Vinita, yes, it's written 6 people who have been freed. So for the one to be self-realized. Okay, I said 7, no? Yeah. Thanks, Vinita. 6. Okay, so yes, so Sonal, yeah, it is a very important. I think this is a very important takeaway for each one of us. not to judge, because spirituality doesn't belong to this realm of physical thing. So those rules don't apply, because we don't know what we have been carrying from the past. We don't know who is carrying what from the past, and why they have incarnated in this particular way in this lifetime. uh, can be a very high soul, so it's better not to. So yeah, okay, so here we are. So yes, so this is where he says that East and West must establish a golden middle path of activity and spirituality combined, and that is the whole purpose. So Master also said that, India is the guru. The spirituality, for spirituality, India is the guru. But then America, the West, can teach us materialism also, because there has to be a balance, right? And Master said that, in America, India, we will always say, oh, it's karma, it's my karma, that is why this is, I'm going through this. Whereas if you go and tell the American that, eventually you will overcome it, and you will say, eventually, why not now? Let us do it now, come on, they're very practical people. But that is where it is important that we bring the spirituality of the East and the practicality of the West, and that is where the balance needs to be happening. And this is what he's talking about, Babaji, right? India has much to learn from the West in material development. In return, India can teach the universal methods by which the West will be able to base its religious beliefs on the unshakable foundation of yoga science. This is where it is all starting, right? And he says, you, Swamiji, I mean, it's not just Swamiji, have a part to play in the coming harmonious exchange between Orient and Occident. Now we realize when he said that, Lahiri Mahashaya asked me to, encouraged me to go. He didn't ask, he didn't say, Shri Yukteswar, go to Kumbh Mela. He encouraged. He's not forcing. He encouraged. Why don't you go? But Lahiri Mahashaya knew that this interaction has to happen. Babaji will meet him. Yet he was not forcing it. That is what the gurus do. We have the free choice, free will, that we have. God has given us the free will, and that is why millions of lifetimes we are just roaming around, because God gave us the free will to choose him or reject him. And we have been moving around lifetime after lifetime, rejecting him. That is why we are still here, still trying to understand how to get out of it, right? So gurus also give us a free will. So there will be guidance, there will be intuitive guidance, yet we are given the free will to choose to follow it or not. And Sri Yukteswar chose to follow that encouraging guidance that Lahiri Mahashaya said, and so he met Babaji, right? And then he says, some years hence, I will send you a disciple whom you will teach, train for yoga dissemination in the West. So Sri Yukteswar's role was very clear. He has to train this person who will be sent by Babaji. And he says, my son. Isn't that a beautiful way he addresses? Because they are, for us who are on this path, our Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, he is our father. He is our spiritual father. And biological father has his own place in our lives. But spiritual father is the one who has been with us eternally, who will be with us till we find God, till we merge back. He will always remain with us. So, so he says, my son, you are the disciple that years ago Babaji promised to send me. Very clear. He knew who it was, and he was training him. And throughout in that the chapter where we say years and masters, he was very clear that you have to attend college, you have to get graduated, because sometime in future when Swami will go in to the West, they will take you more seriously if you had a college degree too. At that time, Master said, I didn't quite understand what he was talking. But of course he knew, because they are all playing a Leela. They are all self-realized, they are avatars, but they are all playing a role. So here again, he says, it was hard for me to visualize myself in the remote West, away from my beloved Guru And the simple, he didn't say, oh, how will I leave my family, India? Why should I leave all this behind? All that he was saying is away from my beloved Guru. And this simple hermitage piece. And then Babaji, even Sri Yukteswar had written some interpretation on Bhagavad Gita, and Babaji is quoting that just to show that he knows everything that he has been doing. So this is again an important part, that when we become disciples, when we take discipleship and we sign a subtle contract with our gurus, we take the vow, and that, we hand over our lives to you. And though these gurus, because as we had discussed, that when the souls are cast out in this creation, guru is assigned. The guru is following us. He is throughout watching over each one of us. But the moment we magnetize them to us and we say, okay, I am your disciple, take charge of my life, they start taking active interest in us. And thus, Babaji is watching everything that Sri Yukteswar is doing, and he says, he quotes from what he had written, and then he requests him to undertake another task where he needs to show that all these important text scriptures, or what masters say, it's all that there is. Truth is only one. It's just interpreted differently or based on what those disciples need. So he said he gives a task of underlying unity between the Christianity and the Hindu scriptures, Bible and the Hindu scriptures. This is what Sri Yukteswar later on wrote, Holy Science. It was called Kaivalya Darshanam. Yes, I think Kaivalya Darshanam. It's a very small book. Many of you would have read it, I'm sure. There are these shlokas, very crisp Sanskrit shlokas, and very crisp, in English, he has written the meaning. Turns out these shlokas are not like he has taken out from somewhere. He has written those shlokas, the Sanskrit shlokas. And he says, right, later on, he also says that I never wrote in Sanskrit, but it was the blessings of Babaji that the fluid Sanskrit poetry came out of him. And that was the blessings, the blessing of the Guru. When the Guru wants us to do something, then he also makes it possible for us to do it. So here he says, Master, Maharaj, what a command. Shall I be able to fulfill it? So much humility. So this is what, Sri Yukteswar is showing, that kind of humility. So it's difficult to believe that he was judging it. So again, that had to be played out so that for future generations to come, people like us can understand what it takes to be on the spiritual path, right? That humility is important, not to judge. So these things, these leelas are being played out. So very clearly it shows that he's not like, oh yeah, okay, I will write. He's saying, shall I be? And even in that book, Holy Science, the foreword, he says that Babaji has chosen me to write it. I don't know why. Of course, he will be chosen to write, but that kind of humility, I don't know why he has chosen, but it has been given to me, so I'm writing it. It's a beautiful thought to go with. Babaji laughed softly. He says, my son, why do you doubt? Indeed, whose work is this? Who is the doer of all actions? Whatever the Lord has made me say is bound to materialize as truth. So Babaji, as we know, is the reincarnation of Krishna. And in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 11, where he shows him the Vishwarupam, Arjuna the Vishwarupam, he says same things, right? Who is the doer? Whose work is it? Do you think you are the one who's going to? And then that is when he shows him the Vishwarupam, where he sees the people who were going to die on the battlefield. He was like, just eating them, getting into his, and he says they are anyway going to be dead. They have to. You are getting the opportunity to become my channel. You take it, do it. Otherwise, this is anyway going to happen. So we all have to remember, and we all need to pray to be used as a channel by these great masters, by the divine. What blessings to be even, become the instruments of these great masters in this world. So always remembering that it is not I who am doing. I remember Dhyanaji would often say this, when first time she had called, it was 2015, when she had called me and told me to take the classes, and I was like, me? And she said, yeah, you. I first level 1 I took, and then second level 2 I went back. I said, Dhyanaji, I have done level 1, who will take level 2? She said, you. I was like, me? She said, I don't see anybody here, you only. So that time, and then she told me one thing, that I was thinking, I'm being so humble, what do I know about these teachings? She's asking me to teach. Now that's I thought I was being humble, but she said, even that is ego. Even the fact, where you think, I can, obviously I can teach, or the fact, me, how will I? We are closing ourselves. It's me. Oh, me, I have to teach. So it's very important to understand this is also ego. That is also whole point, is to transcend the ego. How do you do? In the God has given me this position, or master has put me in this position where I have to do this. Let him use me as a channel the way he wants it. That is how we transcend the ego, right? So this is where he says, whose work is it? Who is the doer of all actions? Very important points these are. And he says that whatever Lord has, even Babaji is not presuming. He's saying, whatever I'm saying, Lord is making me say, and it will materialize. Simple. Okay, so, and then he says, again, he's still continuing to keep that block where Sri Yukteswar is not able to recognize him as Babaji. So he says, do you know Lahiri is a great soul, right? And then he sends a message to him. When he comes back and tells Lahiri, and Lahiri says, didn't you know? Because Lahiri knew that he was going to meet Babaji. So he says, didn't you recognize him? Such a beautiful thing, no? He says, his eyes dancing with laughter. He says, I see you couldn't, for he prevented you. This is, where they will come and give us a lesson and go away. Because we think, oh, Babaji has to look a particular way and only that will be Babaji. We don't know how the divine, how masters will send us messages, give us our, lessons in any form. So the whole point is always to be ready, always to be receptive, always to keep tuning into them, for them to reach out to us. If Sri Yukteswar, even though he didn't recognize Babaji, but if he was able to meet Babaji, it was only because he was so open. He was so receptive to his guru, to Lahiri Mahashaya, right? So he says, so here, and then Sri Yukteswar says, oh, if only I recognized him. This is what Babaji didn't want. At that moment, that interaction would have been, Sri Yukteswar answered him naturally, in the very natural way, what he thought, because he didn't know it was Babaji. Had he known it was Babaji, those answers wouldn't have come that Babaji wanted him to, because Sri Yukteswar had to understand that he was the chosen one who will train the disciple to be sent to West. So for that, this interaction was important. So hence he sent. So then he gives him the message. What is the message? Very simple. He said that the stored up power of this life has run now low. It is nearly finished. And when he said this, Sri Yukteswar didn't understand the impact, what it really meant, right? Only when he saw Lahiri Mahashaya's, how he responded to that statement, is when he realized that what Babaji had said was that it's time for Lahiri Mahashaya to exit the planet. And here again, he's saying that Babaji didn't really need Sri Yukteswar to send this message to Lahiri Mahashaya. They are omniscient. They can communicate any which way. But then if Lahiri Mahashaya had received directly from Babaji and left the body, it wouldn't have become a big thing for us to understand. So, like the one that chapter where we saw that Mataji had requested Babaji to not leave the planet but continue as a deathless saint for this yuga cycle. And he agreed. Again, that Lahiri Mahashaya, Babaji, and Mataji could have done it on their own. But they called Ram Gopal Mazumdar because a witness was needed who would be like in awe of what was happening and then relate it to other disciples, and for us to understand, my goodness, such an important thing happened. And similarly here, Babaji and Lahiri Mahashaya used a medium, Sri Yukteswar, so that it could be written down for each one of us to understand how beautifully this was. Everything is so preordained, very divine. So again, he used it, as he is saying, though Babaji and Lahiri Mahashaya are omniscient, they don't need to communicate each other through me or any other intermediary. The great ones often condescend to play a part in the human drama. Occasionally, they agree to do this. Occasionally, they transmit their prophecies through passengers in an ordinary way, that the final fulfillment of words may infuse great divine faith in a wide circle of men. So again, it's not something we say, oh, wow, Babaji and Lahiri Mahashaya are such big souls. My goodness, this is how they communicate. No, it is only for us to have more faith in what we are reading and trying to understand in this, that on the path of spirituality. It is for each one of us to have more faith, to make it more stronger, because we are all doubters, right? We are here and then we think, oh, is it possible? Oh, we again, something nice happens, we say, oh, master's hand. And then something not what we expect to happen didn't happen, then we start having doubts, like that penniless boys where Jitendra would do. They get good food, he's very happy. Oh my goodness, why did I even doubt? The moment he comes out, he again starts fighting. That is what we are all doing. We keep fighting. We keep telling master, oh, are you there? Are you even there? Are you even taking care of me? That is the reason they play these human drama, to make us understand. They are watching over each one of us. The more we open ourselves to them, the more we are receptive, the more we are in tune, we will be able to understand that everything that they are sending us is for our own spiritual growth, right? So then he says, no sooner had I begun my task that I was able to compose a poem dedicated to the deathless Guru. He says that the melodious lines flowed effortlessly from my pen, though never before had I attempted Sanskrit poetry. Swami Kriyananda would often say that, he used to find, he is an American. So initially, he used to find doing those yoga postures very difficult. He couldn't perform them. But then when some visitors had come, master would call Swami Kriyananda and he would ask him to perform do all those yoga postures, and he said that he could do it all effortlessly, even the Shirsasana, even the most difficult of the asanas, he could do effortlessly. And he said that was because of the blessings of the Guru, the grace of the Guru. So similarly, he's talking, Babaji has given him the mission. He is ensuring that he is able to do it. So it's not like, oh, he is able to write, wow, I have written such wonderful Sanskrit poetry. No, he is saying that because of that, he has given him the power to write. So he given the mission, and he's also given him the power to do it. Everything that is needed for him to accomplish the task is also given by the Guru, right? Again, we remember that in further next chapter, where he says, I go to the West. Similarly, he's on this ship and they come and tell him that, somebody comes and tells him, why don't you give us a lecture in English? Mostly the ship was full of the Westerners. He couldn't speak English that well. So he couldn't say. Then he prayed to his Guru. And then he says, well, one hour, I think. he lectured. He says, I don't even remember what I said, but people came back and said, wow, what a lecture it was. He says, that was the power of my guru. Otherwise, I didn't even know the language. It just flowed through me. So we should have that faith, that openness, that attunement with our guru. And that is the reason, practicing the presence of the guru, always calling upon him in everything, small, big, whatever we are doing. The more we practice, the more it will become natural for each one of us to be able to be used as their instrument, be a channel for their message, their teachings, their guidance in this world. And I think this is where we stopped. And he says, to my relief, my book was finished in a short time. I realized that this speedy blessing was due to the grace of my Param Guru Maharaj. The chapters first appeared, whatever. This is where we stopped, I think, and the time is over. So we also stop here. Well, we'll finish the next part in the next class. Anybody wants to add anything to it? So the takeaway today for each one of us is not to judge, which is not just for this week, but throughout. Not to judge, catch ourselves whenever we think that we are, somewhere judging this person. And other is always practicing attunement, always practicing the presence of the guru. Understand everything that now that we have opened ourselves to their guidance, everything that is coming to us is from their hands for our own good. So this is something that we need to practice. Sometimes it's difficult, but the whole point is the more we practice, then slowly it starts becoming natural. As Master said, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. So there will be times when we'll keep slipping off, but the whole point is brush off, and start all over again. So with that, thank you for joining. A very happy new year to all of you. We'll meet next year.